Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today it's a new year. It's the same NHL recap as usual. We're recapping the past 2 weeks of the NHL season, going back right before Christmas all the way up until now. Happy 2024, guys. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Make sure that you follow us down below, youtube.com/I-80 Sports. Hit subscribe, hit the bell notification so that way you guys know when our content goes live. And actually here going forth, hopefully we'll have weekly content coming for you guys. Now that we're out past the holiday season, things are about to, business is about to pick up here in the NHL. Happy New Year, happy holidays to everybody everywhere. It's funny. I'm even stumbling over my own words right now because it's just so exciting of a time in the NHL and getting, outside of the NHL and in American hockey sports, outside of American hockey sports. It's just been a time. Make sure that you subscribe down below to catch up with all of those news, and make sure you hit up our comment section down below with what you think going on in and out of the NHL right now. While you're here, hit the like button so that way you can let us know if you like the content that we're giving you guys. Also, if you guys are still on X, make sure you follow us down below at I80_sports NHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. I'm Brian. He's Tom. And new year, new me. I'm actually remembering directions now. Tom, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. And so far, it is a very happy new year for me, at least, because right now, a certain tournament and a certain country that I'm from is doing very well, and it's got me in a very good mood. So let's just get right to it here, huh?
Could that be the reason why you're wearing that USA shirt today?
Oh, I got 2 USA shirts that I've been beating the crap out of the last 2 weeks.
I think a lot of us have for sure, especially with how the World Juniors has been going, which, speaking of which, segues are cool. Let's talk about some news and notes of the week. It's time to hit up our traffic report.
The I-80 Sports Traffic Report, where you can find all your news and notes from the week.
When we had last left you guys, we were talking quite a bit about the lead up to the World Juniors tournament taking place starting on Boxing Day, December 26, 2023, which is so weird to say 2023 and not 2024 right now. But yeah. The World Juniors tournament has been going on, and it's been quite an exciting tournament. We've seen some upsets. We've also seen some really strong play from other countries as well. And lo and behold, the finals are set in the World Juniors tournament. It will be Team USA versus Team Sweden. And let's unpack this a little bit, Tom. I'll let you start. I know you've been keeping up a lot more with the tournament than I have, especially. I've been really kind of catching games here and there when I've been able to. It's been a little bit of a busier holiday season for me, for sure, and a busy beginning of the new year. However, we'll start here with you, Tom. Thoughts on the tournament overall, and overall thoughts on who you think is going to win in the finals?
Well, it's been a good tournament so far. The tournament actually is taking place in Sweden, in Gothenburg, where Vassar Frölunda plays, where Henrik Lundqvist played his senior hockey in Sweden before he came over to New York. Lundqvist was at the game against Canada where Sweden won 2-0, was in the crowd, was camera highlighted on him a lot. Our team, the U.S., they were favored in this tournament. They were. There's no two ways around it. And, they've won every game so far. And they've won every game in different kinds of fashion so far. So far, they're living up to their end of the bargain. Canada, who a lot of people thought would have a chance, actually went down against the Czech Republic in the quarterfinals, which I was very surprised about. But this team, Canada, wasn't as dominant as others. I guess a lot of guys had graduated to the NHL, and it was a team of fairly new players, including projected first overall pick Macklin Celebrini. So the tournament so far, we are in the finals. The U.S. beat Finland today 3-2 after being down 2-0. Sweden beat Czechia 5-2. Czechia, who upset those same Canadians. The other scores in the quarterfinals, Finland did edge out Slovakia 4-3. That's just another one. U.S. beat Latvia 7-2. I'm going to discuss 2 other quarterfinal matchups in a minute. But when we're going into the finals here, USA and Sweden are just about the 2 best teams in this tournament. They are. They're just about level everywhere. Right now, the top 2 scorers in this tournament both play for Team USA and Cutter Gauthier and Gavin Brindley. That's not to say that Sweden doesn't have top scorers either. Jonathan Lekkerimäki is tied for 2nd in scoring. Noah Osterlund is 5th in scoring. So that's another big one. Also Macklin Celebrini, who I previously mentioned, he had 8 points in 5 games. Not bad for a potential number 1 overall this summer at the draft, this June at the draft. The thing with Celebrini is I didn't think he was going to be used as much. Obviously, Canada's changing their ways a little bit. I thought he'd be seeing more time on the bench, but I think they also thought that he might not be back there next year. Besides my point. So, and also another thing to discuss is in net. I'm going to just try to find the goaltending leaders here. I'm actually on the wrong thing. I'm sorry, guys.
While you find the goaltending matchup also for Team USA and Team Sweden.
Actually, I got it right here.
I was also going to say for Team Sweden, another player that's really kind of stood out to me is Detroit prospect Axel Sandin Pellikka. He has been very good for Team Sweden as well. Scored a really impressive, sweet little wrist shot while pedaling backwards as well the other day. And he's been very noticeable to me on the ice the times I've been able to catch Team Sweden.
So when we go into goaltending here, Hugo Havlin, Sweden starting goaling. Trey Augustine, the U.S. is starting goaling. 1-2 in goalie stats right now for both of them. So that's basically a wash too. So when it comes down to intangibles and how the teams have played, it comes down to this. Obviously, tomorrow, Sweden is going to be the official road team because the U.S. finished number 1 overall in the round robin. We both know that's a load of crap. We know Sweden is the home team. The game is in Gothenburg. They're the home team. They're going to have the fans on their side. We know that. The U.S. has not lost a game yet. The Swedes did not give up a goal till game 4 of the round robin. However, since that loss in game 4 of the round robin against Finland, the Swedes have been sort of Jekyll and Hyde. They took them overtime to beat Switzerland in the quarterfinals. They were up and down against the Czechs, so they finally waking up in the 3rd period to win 5-2. And with the unsettledness, it might give the U.S. a little bit of an edge. The U.S. haven't lost a game yet. They've won a game in every kind of fashion you can win. They've won close ones. They've won blowouts. They found a way to win today after being down 2 quick goals in the first versus Finland. So obviously we know the game is in Sweden. It's going to be in front of a raucous crowd. And everyone said, oh, well, that's a complete disadvantage. Yes and no. The U.S. is now 4-2 against Sweden in knockout round games, one of those being the gold medal game in 2013 in Ufa, Russia. And let's just say the U.S. is no stranger to having to go into hostile territory to win a gold medal. 2010 in Canada, 2017, also in Canada. Went into Saskatchewan and Montreal, won the gold medal in front of crazy Canadian crowds both times. So as good as Sweden has been, they've kind of settled down a little bit lately. They've been showing some cracks. So I got to give my nod in this gold medal game to the U.S. tomorrow. I really do. You all right over there?
Yeah, I'm just pulling myself apart based on these matchups right now. Literally went to go move something on my end and just full on knocked my whole camera setup down. We can fix ourselves. But I guess segues are weird on my part. Let's see if we can at least fix this for right now. I'm going to hold it for at least a second while I get situated again. Let's see if I can at least hold it straight. But my thoughts, so far, Team USA might be the undefeated team, but as Tom mentioned before, the tournament's in Sweden. Team Sweden is obviously going to have the advantage. They're going to have the fans on their side. That's absolutely going to play quite a bit of a factor. And as Tom also pointed out before, both teams are very evenly matched at the moment. Maybe a slight edge goes to Team USA offensively, especially with the play of Cutter Gauthier. However, I could see this going either which way in the finals. It's just going to be about whatever team comes out hot at the very beginning and who can sustain momentum and kind of shift the game as time goes on. Moving on from the World Juniors here, because we could talk for a mile about that. We do got to talk a little bit about some really cool outside NHL news, outside of the NHL game, outside of the prospect game. The PWHL, the Women's Hockey League, their inaugural season has just kicked off with a matchup on New Year's Day, Toronto facing New York. And I watched the majority of that game, and it was a fun matchup. It was such a good game. If you didn't catch it, you missed out completely. If you're able to catch some WHL games this season, I know MSG is going to be the home of a lot of, if not all of, New York's games going forward. But I believe CBC is the network that the PWHL is going to be the home of right now, network-wise. So if you're able to watch, I encourage you guys, go out and watch it. It's fun hockey. It's competitive hockey. And it blew me away completely. You also had a sold-out crowd in the old Maple Leafs Gardens as well for the inaugural matchup between Toronto and New York as well. And it's awesome to see, any hockey league in North America succeeding is important, no matter what gender it may be, for male or for female. But I love seeing the women's game expand more and having a win like this. Tom, what are your thoughts overall from the inaugural start of the PWHL season?
I mean, so far so good. I love that they played in the old Maple Leaf Gardens. Obviously, it's not the same layout. It's right now, it's kind of half a grocery store, half a college hockey rink. But it's just, it's just a history. A Toronto and New York matchup obviously harkens back to the old original 6 days. Playing in the old Maple Leaf Gardens, you have a damn near sellout in game one. Obviously, the rinks are a little bit smaller. But I mean, so far so good. So far so good. And, I hope it goes places. I hope it's able to grow like the WNBA has been able to grow, and kind of like how women's soccer has been able to grow too. After some false starts. So far, so good. So far, all is well. So let's just see where it goes from here.
From PWHL here, the last bit of news that we need to talk about before talking about our injury report. The Winter Classic happened. Speaking of New Year's Day, because we talked about how PWHL started their inaugural season on January 1st. The Winter Classic, as always, was held on January 1st as well. And it was a classic matchup. I would like to say a classic matchup between Vegas Golden Knights and Seattle Kraken. And lo and behold, not as competitive on the Vegas Golden Knights side of things. Seattle Kraken come away from that game 3-0 against the Vegas Golden Knights. The first shutout in Winter Classic history. And it goes to, of all people, Joey Decord of the Seattle Kraken. And this was a hot crowd behind him if anybody was able to watch. Tom, thoughts on the Winter Classic this year?
I mean, I liked it. I'd like to see Vegas lose. Vegas taking part in a Winter Classic, I guess, is so. They did win the cup. I'm just hoping they never do a Winter Classic in Vegas in the desert. That just wouldn't make any sense. I like that it was done in Seattle. I think that maybe it should have been done a little more to shed light on Seattle's hockey history. Seattle, before the Kraken, has been a hockey town. They've had junior teams, minor league teams. They had a pro team 100 years ago that won the Stanley Cup. They did do a nod to that on their jerseys of Kraken. They did do their nod to the old Seattle Metropolitans with their jerseys. I like that. The game itself, it was 3-0. I mean, it wasn't the greatest Winter Classic I ever watched. Could have been a little bit better. Could have been a lot worse. I mean, the worst one ever was probably Gillette Stadium, where Montreal smacked Boston 5-1. That one was really forgettable, so it wasn't nearly as bad as that one. But I like that. I like that they brought the kid out and did the tribute to Jimi Hendrix with the national anthem. Couple things I could have done without. I didn't understand why they're doing the Pikes Fish Market, where they're throwing the fish over to players where they're coming out. What if one of them got hit with a fish? That I didn't understand. I thought it was really dumb. But, I mean, for the most part, it was okay. It was all right. I've seen better. I've seen a lot better. I've seen a lot worse. All in all, not a bad game. And like I said, me personally, I always love seeing Vegas lose. So you're not going to hear me complain.
I thought it was an interesting matchup. Overall, funny to put into words, I really thought Vegas was going to come out showing a lot more. And it's not for lack of trying. Vegas certainly was really working as hard as they could to get into that game. And I mean, 35 saves on 35 shots by Vegas. Joey Decord comes away with the MVP of the Winter Classic, and rightfully so. He stood on his head the entire game and made some really, really nice saves for Seattle. And that was the biggest reason why Seattle won that game and had the chance in that game regardless. But overall, not a bad Winter Classic. It was not a boring game. It was well done. I'll agree with Tom here. A little bit weird with the whole fish tossing thing. Kind of gave off some vibes for those of you that are fans out there of, not obscure media, but older media. Gave me Muppet Show vibes of the one character, New Zealand, who would like throw fish randomly. It kind of give me vibes of that.
mean, it's a tradition in Seattle at that fish market. They throw your fish to you, but throwing the fish over hockey players coming out on the ice, I just don't understand that.
Oh, no, and I agree, and I get that, but it was still just like, all right, still a little bit bizarre, but still cool overall. Still not bad. But overall, a decent game, and we'll probably be talking a little bit later about what teams we want to see face off in the next Winter Classic as well. So more on that a little later on. Time to get to our injury report here. Not a whole lot to catch up on, but I felt like we had a few season-ending injuries occur during the time that we've been off, so we got to talk about some of those. Let's talk about some minor injuries first. Starting here with the Anaheim Ducks, Ross Johnston is questionable Friday night with an illness. Troy Terry is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. Radko Gudas is questionable Friday with an illness as well. And also questionable on Friday is Ryan Strome with an upper body injury. Leo Carlsson is going to be out until early February with a knee injury that dates back to December 28th, so pre-New Year. On to the Arizona Coyotes. Jason Zucker is eligible to return from suspension on January 11th after beginning serving his suspension today, Thursday, January 4th. Nothing else new to update on the Arizona Coyotes side of things. A lot of outdated injuries and injuries that we've already discussed. One update for Barrett Hayton. It's looking like an early February return from an upper body injury for him. Nothing new for the Boston Bruins. Moving on to the Buffalo Sabres. Kyle Okposo is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Calgary Flames, the only thing new to report here is Oliver Shillington, who has been out all year so far for personal reasons, has begun skating again. He has begun working out with the team again, which is great to see. I hope a lot of his personal issues are clear at this point and that he's all good to go. And it may provide a jolt to a Calgary team that desperately needs a jolt at the moment. Carolina Hurricanes, who have been on fire lately. We'll talk about them in a little bit, but Stefan Nason is questionable Friday with an illness, and Jesper Fast is also questionable Friday with a head injury. Chicago Blackhawks, we got a few injuries to talk about here. Anthony Beauvillier is out indefinitely with a wrist injury. Seth Jones is slated for a mid-January return from a shoulder injury. Tyler Johnson is out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury that dates back to New Year's Day. Taylor Radish is also out indefinitely with a groin injury dating back to pre-New Year's. And Joey Anderson is also out indefinitely with an upper body injury. Down to the Colorado Avalanche. Ryan Johansson is questionable Thursday night with an illness. Arturi Lehkonen is slated now for a late January return from his neck injury that dates back to the beginning of December. And because the Columbus Blue Jackets can't have nice things, there are some injuries to report here for them as well. Zach Werenski, who left in the middle of a December matchup with the New Jersey Devils, is slated for a mid-February return with an ankle injury. Kind of twisted his ankle very, very oddly and very awkwardly in his matchup against the Devils on December 30th, and he's going to be out until at least the middle of February with that. Adam Boqvist is slated for a mid-January return from a shoulder injury. Also slated for a mid-January return from an abdominal injury is Sean Corrali. Probable for Thursday night's matchup with an illness is Daniil Tarasov. Questionable for Thursday night's matchup with illnesses respectively, Yegor Chinikov and Ivan Provorov. Moving down to the Dallas Stars, Jake Ottinger, as of right now, is a mid-January return from his lower body injury. That's the only update I have on him at the moment. To the Detroit Red Wings, Andrew Kopp is questionable Thursday with a lower body injury, and Ville Husso is still out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Also out indefinitely still at the moment is Klim Kostin with an upper body injury. Edmonton Oilers, Sam Gagner is out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury. And for the Florida Panthers, questionable Thursday night, trying to clear concussion protocol is Nick Cousins. And slated for a mid-January return right now from injury is Jonah Gadjikov. So mid-January return with an illness at the moment. We've got an update right now on Victor Arvidsson, finally, of the LA Kings. There is a tentative plan for Victor Arvidsson to make a mid-February return from his back injury that has kept him out all season so far. Be great to see him back after missing the entirety of this season so far. Would love to see him come back to the ice for the LA Kings here. Also slated for a mid-January return right now is Phoenix Copley, who has been out with a lower body injury for LA. For Minnesota, out Thursday night officially, Marcus Foligno is going to be out with a lower body injury. Matt Zuccarello is slated for a mid-January return from an upper body injury. Jared Spurgeon is out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury, and Kirill Kaprizov is a mid-January return with a lower body injury. Vinny Lettieri is also out indefinitely with a lower body injury, and Philip Gustafson is also out indefinitely with a lower body injury. And still out as of right now is Jonas Brodin for the Minnesota Wild as well. He has been out indefinitely with an upper body injury, slating back to the middle of December. So Minnesota really hurting here at the current moment, and hopefully they don't start losing traction here in the Central Division for themselves. Going down to the Montreal Canadiens, Josh Anderson is probable Thursday night with a knee injury, but out for the entirety of the rest of this season with a pectoral tear is Christian Dvorak. Unfortunate to see as well. Slated for a late January return with an upper body injury is Tanner Pearson, so looking like he's going to make a late January return. Alex Newhook, the update I've got here on his ankle injury, it looks like that maybe instead of being out for the entirety of this season, he might be ahead of schedule. As of right now, he's slated for an early March return from his ankle tear, or rather, it might have been a high ankle sprain. Raphael Harvey-Pinard is a late January return from a lower body injury, and that is all to update so far for the Montreal Canadiens. Tyson Barrie of the Nashville Predators is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. To the New Jersey Devils, after missing last night's game, meaning Wednesday night's game against the Washington Capitals, it has been reported that Andre Palat will also miss Friday's game against the Chicago Blackhawks with a lower body injury. Apparently took a awkward turn in practice or had some kind of awkward collision in practice, and that is the reason why he's out at the moment. Lindy Ruff has been on record and said that he's going to miss, quote, a few games with this lower body injury. Also questionable Friday night is Timo Meier with an abdominal injury. It was originally called a medium body injury, but now it has been designated as an abdominal injury. Questionable Friday night. We'll see if he actually returns. No update on Dougie Hamilton. It's looking like it's probably around playoff time that he's still going to come back from his pectoral tear. To the New York Islanders, questionable Thursday night with a lower body injury is Semyon Varlamov. Robert Bortuzzo is out indefinitely with a lower body injury, and also out indefinitely with a lower body injury is Ryan Pulock. Still no update on his return either. New York Rangers out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury is Tyler Pitlick, but it's okay, Rangers fans, because you called up Brendan Ottman when that happened. So
one more thing to say, Capo Caco actually skated with the team today in a non-contact jersey, so he's nearing returning.
That's a good thing to hear as well for Capo Caco. I know we've been hearing whispers that he's been ready to come back relatively soon, so maybe a mid-January to late January return for him, which would be fun to see. Ottawa Senators, Zach McGowan is out Thursday with an illness. Rourke Chartier is a mid-January return from an upper body injury. Also a mid-January return with a lower body injury is Matthew Joseph, who has been out with a lower body injury since pre-New Year's. Philadelphia Flyers, nothing new to update there. Nothing new to update on the injuries to Noah Cates or Ryan Ellis, but let's be real, there's never going to be an update on Ryan Ellis. Pittsburgh Penguins, Matt Nieto is an early March return from his knee injury. And also out indefinitely with an undisclosed injury is John Ludwig. San Jose Sharks, this was recently reported today. Matt Benning is going to be out for the remainder of this season with a hip injury. Slated for a mid-January return is Logan Couture. He's been out with a lower body injury. Giovanni Smith is out indefinitely with a lower body injury. And Jacob McDonald is also out indefinitely with a lower body injury. Seattle Kraken, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is slated for an early February return after a leg injury took him out pre-New Year's. And no update yet on Philip Grubauer after being out indefinitely with a lower body injury since the middle of December. St. Louis Blues, Justin Falk is out indefinitely with a lower body injury.
There's no real...
Tampa Bay Lightning, Mikhail Sergachev is slated for a mid-January return from a lower body injury. Eric Chernak is questionable Thursday night against who are they playing actually tonight? Against the Minnesota Wild, ironically enough, with all those injuries. Questionable Thursday night with an upper body injury. Hayden Fleury is also out indefinitely with a hand injury. And that's all to report on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nothing really new to report here for Toronto Maple Leafs. We covered the Joseph Woll injury and Ryan Reeves injury on our previous episode. Vancouver Canucks, Philip DiGiuseppe is out Thursday night with an undisclosed injury. And down to the Vegas Golden Knights, Keegan Colasar is out Thursday night with an illness. And Ben Hutton is out indefinitely with an upper body injury. William Karlsson also out indefinitely with a lower body injury. And slated for a mid-January return is Aiden Hill, who has been out with a lower body injury since New Year's Eve. Moving on down to the Washington Capitals here. Charlie Lindgren is slated for a mid-January return from an upper body injury. Also slated for a mid-January return for the same reason is Sonny Milano. Slated for a mid-January return as well from a lower body injury is TJ Oshie, who has been out since before the new year. And lastly, the Winnipeg Jets. David Gustafsson is set to make a mid-January return from a lower body injury. And Ville Heinola, who we have not really seen so much this season, is slated for a mid-January return from an ankle injury. Rasmus Kupari is also slated for a mid-January return from a shoulder injury. And lastly, Kyle Connor, who has been out since the middle of December, it's looking like the middle of February is when he's going to return from his knee injury. So it's what happens when we miss a few weeks of hockey. We just have to go and cover all these injuries. So thanks for grin and bearing it while we went through that for sure. But time to slowly make our ascent to the end of this episode. But that's not what I wanted to display. It's time for Wow or Worrisome. Let's talk about teams that are wowing us lately and teams that are worrying us lately. So, Tom, let's start here with you. Who's wow? Who's worrisome?
Okay, well, wow week. I gotta call it like I see it. Carolina, 6-1-3 in the last 10. Slowly creeping up in the division. 5 points behind the Rangers for first place right now. Really put a beating on the Rangers the other night. I mean, the reffing in that game was a bit questionable. You could say I'm biased, whatever. I don't really care. But they've been playing better lately. But like I always say about the Canes, until they prove it to me in the playoffs, all they are is this era's version of the San Jose Sharks. I'm sorry. I got to call it like I see it. Edmonton Oilers. I said it before and I'll say it again, that hiring of Chris Knobloch was great. 7-3 in the last 10. The Oilers are slowly but surely crawling up the standings again in the Pacific Division, where two teams I'm going to talk about in a little bit are slowly starting to lose their footing. So the Oilers are right behind Arizona right now for that second wild card spot. 1 point behind Arizona, 3 points behind Nashville for the top wild card spot, and right now 6 points behind LA for third place in that Pacific Division. top 3 in the Central, all playing well. Colorado, we thought they would be this way. Right now, Colorado, 7-2-1 in the last 10. Dallas, 7-2-1 in the last 10 as well, but we thought they were going to be there. We knew what Colorado and Dallas were capable of. One team I got to tip my cap to, those Winnipeg Jets. We really didn't know where Winnipeg was going this year. We didn't know. Right now, Winnipeg, 7-1-2, won their last 3 in a row. I don't think anybody thought Winnipeg was going to be this good. You figured maybe they'd be a wild card team, maybe they'd be a bubble team. Winnipeg's got some firm footing in that Central Division right now, and I got to tip my cap to the Jets. I really, really do. I really, really do. Cause for concern, worrisome. Vegas Golden Knights, 4-6 in the last 10, but it's beyond the last 10. Since their hot start, they've basically been a 500 team since that hot start, that hot first 6 weeks. They didn't really look so good in the Winter Classic, and they've been having some trouble. And now the Pacific Division that you and we both thought that would be a runaway from them, is not looking like that anymore, and they're not even in first place anymore. That belongs to the Vancouver Canucks right now, who also are a wow team, but I talk about them every week, so I figured you guys were sick of hearing me talk about them, so I'm not going to talk about them anymore. That other team up top, who I was singing their praises a couple weeks ago, those LA Kings, 4-5-1 in the last 10. All of a sudden, the Kings are coming back down to earth, and what's the team that always ruins things for the Kings, no matter what, that's right breathing down their neck right now? Those Edmonton Oilers. Oilers are breathing down the Kings' next. The Oilers are going to ruin it for the Kings yet again for the 3rd year in a row in some way, shape, or form. And now we move on to, I guess, the obvious one. The obvious elephant in the room here. The Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings. 3-7 in their last 10. A team that you and I and everybody else a few short weeks ago thought were a shoo-in for the playoffs. Thought were a shoo-in for a top 3 spot in that Atlantic Division. That doesn't seem so much. That doesn't seem a short thing anymore. The Red Wings right now are out of the playoffs. I mean, 2 points out of a wild card spot, but out of the playoffs, 3-7 in their last 10, bent over backwards to go get Patrick Kane. And now, if they don't get their you-know-what straight, are they going to be bending over backwards, trading him at the deadline? Because, like we all know, and it's as obvious as anything else, he's got that clause in his contract as if the Wings don't make the playoffs, he wants out. So will we be talking about Patrick Kane in another couple weeks on where he might be going again this time? Because if Detroit's that bad, he's not going to want to stay there. So that's it for me for this week, the wow or worrisome.
Yeah. I'll go over some wows first for me, just kind of looking at the breakdown of their last 10 games overall. Some wows to me, just like Tom had mentioned before, the Carolina Hurricane, who also really put it to the New York Rangers earlier this week as well, beating them into submission. Carolina has won their last 4 games as well. So Carolina really, really starting to creep up here on the New York Rangers in first place in the Metropolitan Division. New York Rangers, as good as they've been, they're 6-4 in their last 10 games as well. They have 51 points in the Metropolitan Division. Carolina is creeping up on them, staying right behind them with 46 points. New York and Philadelphia, New York Islanders and Philadelphia Flyers are also keeping pace right behind the Carolina Hurricanes at the moment. But the other team that was going to be a wow for me as well is New York. No, not New York. The New Jersey Devils from the last 10 games. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. And it really stinks to see the New Jersey Devils send down Akira Schmid, but he's had some struggles this season. He needs to get his head refocused down in Utica. But coming up in his place, Nico Dawes, who's been very good in a few games in Utica, he's been pretty steady, backing up Vitek Vanacek up in New Jersey for the last week and a half. So overall, the Devils have been creeping their way back up. They're currently sitting in a playoff spot if the season ended today at the moment. They're only 1 point behind the Philadelphia Flyers, 2 points behind New York Islanders, and 4 points behind the Carolina Hurricanes. So this Metropolitan Division is wide open. And right below them, 2 points behind the New Jersey Devils right now, is the Pittsburgh Penguins, who have had the best past 10 games of any team in the Metropolitan Division. They are 7-2-1 in their last 10. And one reason why I think Pittsburgh should not be counted out just yet, despite being 7th right now in the Metropolitan Division, everybody knows at this point, I'm big on goal differential when it comes to the long-term success of a team. They're a plus 13 goal differential right now, which there's really no other seventh place team that's doing that at the moment. That's how deep this Metropolitan Division truly is. It's also why I'm a little bit worried going forward for a team like the New York Islanders, who maybe could start seeing maybe a downswing. They're at a minus 10 goal differential, and they're in third place in the Metropolitan Division.
Can I interject something real quick?
Go for
End
it.
of the first period in Boston right now. Penguins 4, Bruins 2.
That's what I'm saying. The Penguins are not a bad team. They're really not. They're a team with an identity crisis, but they're not a bad team. Tom mentioned before the top three in the Central Division of the Western Conference right now, and I got to completely agree. I mean, you look at their last 10 for Colorado, for Winnipeg, for Dallas, 7-2-1 for Colorado in their last 10, 7-1-2 for Winnipeg in their last 10, 7-2-1 for Dallas in their last 10 as well. And you've got other teams keeping pace right behind them as well, with the Nashville Predators staying 5 points behind the Dallas Stars right now, but still a decent team in their last 10, 6-3-1 in their last 10. Arizona Coyotes are still that feel-good story in the Central Division right now, 40 points right now, still are above 500 as of right now. They're 6-4 in their last 10. But I got to say, I'm worried about the Minnesota Wild with these injuries going down. You know, these are crucial injuries in the dog days of the NHL season at the moment, and they're currently sitting at 6-4 in their last 10, but that goal differential is worrisome at the moment because being without Philip Gustafson and leaning on Marc-Andre Fleury more, I think is going to be really worrisome for the Minnesota Wild as we start dipping into post All-Star break. Once we get out past February and closer to the trade deadline, what is this team really going to look like and shape up to be like going forward? There is one bright spot to point out for the Minnesota Wild. Marco Rossi is one of the leading candidates right now for the Calder Trophy. He has been a beacon of hope so far for the Minnesota Wild in an otherwise kind of lackluster season thus far. They're sitting right now at 500. They're 16-16-4. So not true 500, but I want to see Minnesota do more. Wow to the Seattle Kraken. They've really been on a tear in their last 10, 7-1-2 in their last 10, and a big emphatic win in the Winter Classic as well. Congratulations also to Joey Decord, who really impressed me in that game, but I'm not going to rehash that. Vegas is really worrying me lately because 4-6 in their last 10. This was a team that a few weeks ago was dominating the Pacific Division. Now that belongs to the Vancouver Canucks, but Vegas is still not that far out. They're at 49 points. Vancouver currently sits at 51 points, a 2-point differential right now for them. I'm not overly concerned with Vegas, and Vegas is still trying to get their way back into this as well. Logan Thompson has not been bad in replace of Aiden Hill, and to try to solve some of those defensive issues right now for the Vegas Golden Knights. The Vegas Golden Knights did claim Tobias Bjornfoot off of waivers from the LA Kings. So maybe that could provide a little bit of a jolt for the Vegas Golden Knights, or he could at least just be an extra warm body on defense as, you know, they still heal up from that Stanley Cup hangover from last year. But yeah, overall, I've been impressed by a bunch of teams. Detroit, yeah, this is really worrisome at this point. I really am going to be curious where they're at post trade deadline and if they're going to be competitive whatsoever. Ottawa's still continuing with their downswing as well. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Huh?
I said I think they're just about done.
Yeah, I unfortunately think Ottawa's just about done as well. They have just not been. I hate to say it. Also, they haven't impressed me at all.
They impressed me that first week of the season where I said they're finally coming out of this, and well, now I'm sitting there wondering for the second year in a row, and the way Detroit's going. Well, who will it be in February? Will it be Patrick Kane or Vladimir Tarasenko down in New Jersey again, potentially?
Yeah. Got to see what happens.
Won't be both again.
Well, yeah. Got to see what happens going forward. Yeah, overall, not a lot of other teams are really worrying me at the moment. So that's why we're worrisome for me. One thing I do want to mention before we dip into our players of the week here, we have some breaking news for the NHL in regards to the All-Star game. It was just announced the captains of the All-Star games. And is it any surprise whatsoever? Tom, I'm going to put you point blank here. Who do you, without even looking at your phone, without even looking at the headlines, who do you think are the captains for the All-Star game this year?
Austin Matthews,
Yep.
Connor McDavid.
That's it so far. Those are who have been named so far. So
yeah, well, I think they got to bring two because I think they're gonna do like a hybrid. It's still gonna be the 3-on-3 tournament, but I think it's gonna be like the choose up sides, like you did with the Brendan Shanahan idea. But it's gonna be the choose up sides, and I heard there's gonna be like a celebrity GM involved or something. I'm so sick of this frick.
Yeah,
you know what I was about to say of this. You know what All-Star game? Let's cancel this freaking thing and let's do that Four Nations Cup next year. Let's get an international tour. Let's get this best on best back. Come on. Watching that World Juniors today, Finland's always been a thorn in our side. I was going as crazy I could go at work when we scored on that power play. Come on. People want international competition. They don't want a stupid all-star game. Enough is enough.
Keep that energy, Tom. Keep that energy. But as Tom cools down here, it's time to move on to high performance. We're going to talk players of the week. Let's talk high performance.
Your I-80 Sports High Performance Players of the Week.
All right, Tom, who are your players of the week that you want to highlight?
Well, I got a homer alert here. Artemi Panarin, 8 points in his last 5, including a hat trick versus Tampa Bay last Saturday night. I got to go with the enemy here, too. Sebastian Aho, 13 points in his last 5 for the Carolina Hurricanes. And then one of my hottest teams out there, Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid, 10 points in his last 5. Those are my 3 for this week.
Yeah, I got to highlight here another teammate of Sebastian Aho's that you mentioned, Andrei Svechnikov in his last 6 games. Along with Sebastian Aho. Sebastian Aho has 13 points in his last 6, as mentioned by Tom before. Andrei Svechnikov has 11 points in his last 6. He has 6 goals in his last 6 games. He has been very, very good and looking like he might be a big reason why Carolina has really found success over the last 10 games. Nathan McKinnon also been impressive over his last 6, 13 points in his last 6 games as well. 6 goals and 7 assists in that span of time. Willie Nylander, 10 points in his last 7 games as well, 4 goals and 6 assists in that time. And an otherwise, bright spot in an otherwise bad season so far, Alex DeBrincat for the Detroit Red Wings has been doing a decent job lately. 10 points in his last 6 games. He has 2 goals and 8 assists during that time as well. I got to shout out real quick Nikita Kucherov, who is still really just keeping pace in this Art Ross chat right now. He has really just been on an absolute tear this season, and I'll be curious to see where his point total is at come the end of the season, if he can maintain this momentum. And could we be talking about Nikita Kucherov as the Hart Trophy winner and being the second time Hart Trophy winner for him at season's end? I think if Tampa Bay manages to find themselves in a playoff spot, I think Nikita Kucherov is going to be one of the biggest reasons why that happens and why we could maybe see him as a 2-time Hart Trophy winner. But we'll just have to see as we keep going on in this NHL season. But as this NHL season goes on, this episode is getting ready to end. But before we end, let's hit up our question of the day, which I'm going to keep it simple today, keep it fun. I want to hear your comments down below with the matchups that you want to see as well. Tom, starting off with you here, what's the Winter Classic matchup that you want to see next year?
Well, it's funny we bring it up because it's at this point I think they've gone everywhere they could have gone. They've done Boston 3 times. Philly's done Stadium Series. Pittsburgh has done a Stadium Series and a Classic. My idea is let's bring it back to Detroit. The problem with Detroit playing in outdoor games is this. They try to push this Detroit and Toronto rivalry, which I guess is heritage. But let's just face it, Detroit and Toronto haven't been rivals since sometime in the 60s. There were some playoff matchups afterwards, the last one coming in 1993. Let's do something that, people our age and maybe some others know. Let's do Detroit and St. Louis at Comerica Park next year. Detroit and Colorado has been done outdoors already. Detroit and Chicago has been done outdoors already. Detroit and St. Louis is a playoff rivalry that I, for one, can remember from the 90s on the ESPN. Those were some good matchups. 96, Steve Yzerman. 97, 98. 02 was a little bit of a blowout in Detroit's favor, but Let's just do it. Detroit and St. Louis. Why not? There's a lot of stuff that you can go back from, and there's a lot of history with that rivalry that people can remember, and a lot of stuff in the modern day. There was a lot of bad blood in the 90s between those two teams. So Detroit and St. Louis, you could have Brett Hull there. He could wear both his jerseys. He could drink as much as he wants. He could tell you how he won 2 Stanley Cups with St. Louis and never won any with Detroit when he gets confused. He can tell you, how Steve Yzerman was a great center and Adam Oates was terrible, all that fun stuff, and how much he loves Mike Keenan. I'm joking around. We love you, Brett Hull, one of my favorites. But yeah, Detroit and St. Louis, Comerica Park, that would be pretty cool, because the last time they did it in Detroit, they did it at the Big House in Ann Arbor, University of Michigan against Toronto. Detroit was the home team, yes, but I always felt that game to be more of a neutral site game in my eyes. So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when trying to decide this one. You always want to try to give it to teams that haven't gotten the chance to play it before, or doesn't otherwise get the opportunity to play in a game like this. And I'm really just kind of looking down a list of like previous matchups, and you certainly do have some rehashed matchups over the past number of years. You've had some interesting matchups. Nashville and Dallas is one that rings to mind in 2020. As a game that I certainly do remember because of the beginning of that game. Minnesota and St. Louis from 2022. Boston and Pittsburgh, which it was a game that I really still feel like didn't need to happen either.
Yeah, Fenway Park too.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at like teams that haven't played in a Winter Classic in a while that would at least be interesting and at least draw numbers. And one team that sticks out to mind that would certainly draw numbers, even though they're not a good team right now, is Chicago Blackhawks. And it's simply because they have Connor Bedard, and putting him on a really big scene could draw some interesting numbers. And if you're really trying to bring eyes to the product and bring eyes to potential superstars, that could be at least a matchup that we look at as, maybe something that we could look at next year if Chicago is more competitive. Chicago, the last time that they played in a Winter Classic was 2019, so it's still pretty fresh. They played the Boston Bruins the last time that happened. Previous times before that, they pretty much got it almost every other year.
And Stadium Series too. That's why I didn't pick them, because they were the NBC years. They were basically in it every other year.
True. But I feel like circumstances can be a little bit different this time around with Connor Bedard actually, playing a key role for the Chicago Blackhawks. He's been the only reason why you watch Chicago Blackhawks games right now, let's be honest. So that might be a team I look at that could be at least interesting to see on the main stage. Personally, you're getting we've gotten Stadium Series games in the past for the New York Rangers and for the New Jersey Devils. But you got a rivalry that's really burgeoning right now between both teams, and it's really starting to fuel back up again with both teams being so competitive. New Jersey has never gotten a Winter Classic. New York has gotten a Winter Classic before. I think we're getting towards that time where the time could just be right for both of these teams to play in a Winter Classic and have a fun matchup, because both teams are pretty equally matched. As of right now, the standings might not necessarily show, but the playoffs proved last year that it absolutely shows. So who knows? Maybe in the next few years, we could see New Jersey and New York actually light it up in a Winter Classic. But if you ask me, if you're thinking about what draws money, I think Chicago going back to the Winter Classic is probably inevitable at this point over the next 2 years. I'm also kind of curious too. We haven't really seen Edmonton play in a Winter Classic.
Problem with Winter Classic is this: they don't want to really involve Canadian teams if they don't have to. If they have to, because it's all about the TV money. If they have to, it's going to be a big team like Montreal or Toronto. Edmonton, as good as McDavid is, it's also about TV money and market revenue and all that fancy stuff. The point is that when a Canadian team is in it, you're not making as much money. That's why they've kind of erred on the side of caution of having Canadian teams in it. Obviously, Detroit and Toronto, it can drum up enough interest. Boston and Montreal can drum up enough interest. Those rivalries have been there. True. But having Edmonton in it, Edmonton's biggest rivalry is the Calgary Flames. You do Edmonton and LA, a Winter Classic in Los Angeles. Just listen to what I just said. Winter Classic in Los Angeles. Doesn't make much sense. You do it up in Edmonton, it's another problem for the American TV money. That's why you haven't seen that.
Yeah, I guess you're right. California market teams always kind of lose out a little bit. I mean, LA does sometimes get to play in these games, but that was really more so in the Stanley Cup winning years and but from 2010 to 2014 for them. But this is why we speculate, and this is why we have this discussion. This question today ended up being a lot better than I really thought it was going to be. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts down below. I want to hear your comments down below. Sound off down below. Let us know what you think the matchup should be next year, or maybe even the year following. And we'd love to talk about it down below. While you're talking about it down below, make sure that you also drop a like as well if you like the content. And also, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, youtube.com/i80sports. Hit the bell notification so that way you know when our content goes live as well. If you're still on X, make sure you follow us down below at i80_sports NHL. And if you follow us already, thank you guys so much because we greatly value all of your support. We've talked enough at this point. We have droned on long enough about our thoughts over the last 2 weeks of the NHL season. Let's watch this current week in the NHL, and we'll come back with you guys next week with our next recap episode. But until then, I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been yet another episode of NHL on i80 Sports.